Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Choose to Think Inspirational podcast. My name is Victoria, and I'm so glad to have you. I have a special guest on the show today. She is the author of the book called You're Doing Better Than You Think, Finding Courage and Confidence When Life Gets Messy, and it's Jennifer Renee Watson. A little bit about her. She is a fierce advocate for mental health and abuse survivors who are bravely healing from unresolved trauma and finding their voice. Jennifer learned how to unpack a lifetime of baggage in the spotlight of leadership and found that outing her brokenness opened more doors than faking perfection ever did. She's the author of Freedom, The Gutsy Pursuit of Breakthrough and the Life Beyond It, and she co-hosts the popular More Than Small Talk podcast with Holly Girth and Suzanne Eller. Jennifer lives in Northwest Arkansas with her 2 daughters and 2 fluffy dogs. She's been in ministry for 24 years and has served in various leadership roles in the local church. She's spoken at churches and conferences all over the U.S. She's served as a volunteer at Saving Grace, NWA, a nonprofit for women ages 19 to 25 who have aged out of foster care or found themselves homeless. I absolutely love that. And you can visit Jennifer at her website. It's jenniferreneewatson.com. And I'll, of course, put all these links in the show notes. And again, her podcast is More Than Small Talk. So I think you're going to really enjoy this interview today, in part because it's so refreshing to have a Christ follower on the show who says, I struggle. Because often we can look at other people who are leaders in ministry and we can just think, oh, they have it all together. And really, those people are just regular, old, everyday people like you and I. And we're just running kind of after Christ as best we can. And sometimes our lives are messy and they're quite exhausting. As a matter of fact, one of my favorite quotes in her book, if I can find it, it goes like this. She says, "You have permission to be a mess and a masterpiece." And that pretty much sums up everything what I want to be and the image that I want to portray. I have permission to be a mess and a masterpiece. God says I'm a masterpiece, but sometimes I'm also very messy and my life isn't maybe even what I would like it to be. It doesn't keep me from longing to be more like Christ. And anyway, I don't want to get off on that tangent. I'm going to let her talk all about it, but she's really, really very sweet lady and down to earth. And I think that you're going to find her book so encouraging and the words on the show today inspirational for you and for your heart, especially as we're coming into this holiday season this year. And it could be any time of the year, but she opens up and confesses a lot of her personal struggles. And I think you're going to find those really heartwarming and encouraging. And maybe after you listen to it, you're going to be like, okay, I'm not the only one. I don't have to keep striving. I don't have to keep working so hard. I don't have to just, have it all together on the outside, whereas in the inside, I'm just so emotionally exhausted and ragged. She's given permission and an allowance for us Christian women to really just breathe and relax and recognize that God is with us in this journey. And it's not about perfection. It's about his truth, and that truth washing over our hearts and our minds and bringing life to whatever kind of chaotic existence we may find ourselves in. So welcome, Jennifer, to the Choose to Think Inspirational podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
We've really not talked at all. And the whole day I've been going through one phrase in your book. I can put it up here. You're doing better than you think. And it was that reminder. I've got a whole bunch of sticky notes in here, but it's a reminder. You have permission to be a mess and a masterpiece.
Yes.
And all day I'm like, I'm just going to cancel that interview. I'm just going to cancel that interview. No joke, because I tweaked my back. Just all these ridiculous things. I'm kind of in a little bit of a funky season because my dad just passed away just a little over a month ago. And so it's kind of a meh. I'm feeling kind of meh and sad and normal.
Right.
And I could just trying to help my mom, and my sister and I were crying on the phone this morning about dad, just little things. I'm like, all I want to do is go crawl in bed right now. And
Yeah.
then I thought, I'm not going to do that to Jennifer. That's what I thought. I thought, we've had this scheduled for a while.
Yeah.
I just want to come on, that it's such a captivating title that you have. What if you're doing better than you think? And then finding courage and confidence when life gets messy. And the one thing that I noted while I was reading the book is that it's just so relatable, and you bring people kind of in there, just the bare bone bottom dollar of it all, that God loves us no matter what. That's kind of the resounding message that I get. But tell us a little bit, Jennifer, about yourself, and
Okay.
then we'll go on into the book and maybe why you decided to write it.
I'm an author and I'm a podcaster and I'm a mom. I'm a dog mom too. And I've been in ministry for over 25 years. So that's a
Wow.
long time. So I love investing in women, but that all started from talking openly and honestly about my mental health and my struggles in an honest place, not from a fake place. And
Yes.
that, opened far more doors than faking perfection ever could have.
Yeah, I believe it. I always call it being that like Sally super Christian where, everybody looks so good on the outside, but good grief, we're struggling and we have our own little battles on the inside. But
So true.
what really like brought you to this point of wanting to just kind of pull the lid off of that and uncover, hey, let's just get real about our mental state and so forth and the struggles we have? What brought you there?
Felt like so many people were not talking about it, and the people that needed to hear it the most, we were feeling shamed and feeling disconnected from everyone else because if we tried harder, if we prayed harder, if we just did one more little thing, we would be okay. And it was never okay. And so I just started getting really honest because I felt like that was the open door for me to find healing by exploring all kinds of avenues of healing, whether it was counseling, medication, taking a walk, all of that. It was just, there was so much more to it, and hiding it was just not going to work anymore.
Was there a moment though, Jennifer, when you're like, okay, I'm really done? I mean, like, what was the turning point for you? I think back on my depression, which was maybe about a decade ago, and I think it was a conversation with a mentor, a dear friend of mine, and she recognized something in my thinking actually, and it was really the ministry it grew out of that very difficult time in my life, but she recognized something in my thinking that was really amiss, and so she challenged me to learn what it meant to begin to take my thoughts captive and to
Yeah.
find that transformation, to be transformed through the renewing of my mind. And but I was at such a low and really depressed. There were so many things going on in my life, and I can very clearly in my mind look back and I can say, okay, it was this and this and this and this and this and this that, sometimes you just feel like you've gotten the life beaten out of you in a way. And so it was all of those things together that, I was able to be like, oh, okay, I'm just down. I'm really low, the lowest I've ever been. So I could recognize that in my life, the things that were going on, and then her speaking into my life, also recognizing as a dear friend that maybe my thinking was just a little bit off. It was an encouraging way for her to tell me that. Was there a moment like that for you when you were at the end of your rope, so to speak, and you're like, okay, something has to give?
Yes, I had just had surgery. I was 31 and had to have a hysterectomy, and it was traumatic.
Ooh,
And
ooh,
I
yeah.
was working with our youth minister at the time, and I was just apologizing to her. I'm like, I'm sorry I didn't invest in you more. I'm sorry I wasn't there for you more. And she said, Jennifer, sometimes we learn more from Clark Kent than we ever could from Superman. And I was like, and so from that just kind of allowed me to like heal. But there were so many things where I was like, I don't have to keep striving and struggling. I can actually address this. So I talk about this in my book a lot, where I had the prescription and I would fill it and then not take it, all of these things. And it was just in that moment, I was like, my body is going through it and it's time for me to take care of it. And medication was one of those options. Having that surgery was one of those options, but it just became a quest to find healthiness mentally and physically.
Would you say, or could you say, was there one single thing that you did that you thought was most helpful for you? Because one of the things that I love about your book is there are a lot of lists in here and
Yes.
little categories and bullets, and I love that. Matter of fact, at some point I would love to read some of them, because your approach is rather holistic. It is not just, okay, let's deal with emotions, but it's also, let's deal with your physical condition as well. But is there, when you think back on your journey, was there one thing that you started doing that may have helped you the most, do you think, outside of that, after that awareness came for you?
I mean, I had to start taking medication. I have
Mhm.
seasonal depression. And so I would do light therapy. So I think just
Okay.
understanding that this was something so much bigger than myself and that there was help for me. But yeah, it was first like accepting the help and receiving it and taking that medication, but also doing other things that would make it easier, like a light therapy, talk therapy, going for a walk. So I felt like there was more than one thing, but it had to start with me acknowledging this is a real thing and it's a real problem, and I'm not big enough to kick it without help.
Gotcha. I can remember sitting beside a lake out in a little adjacent town to where I live in Lexington, Kentucky. Where are you calling from, by the way?
And Northwest Arkansas.
Okay, you're in Arkansas. Okay, so I was sitting, it was a beautiful spring day, and I was on the campus of a really large church, and they had what they called like a peer ministry. So I would go weekly or every other week and just chat with a peer counselor, and it was so helpful to me. And I can remember sitting by that lake, and this was weeks after I had been chatting with her, and it seemed like suddenly I recognized that I felt better. It was just like a little
Yeah.
shimmer of like that moment where I'm like, oh, okay, things are getting better. And it was
Yep.
such a wonderful feeling to have. And then over time, what happened is I might have more and more of those moments,
Right.
and less, fewer and fewer of the dark and the more despairing kinds of moments. But was it similar to you as you
Yeah.
were walking through all that depression and the hardship?
Absolutely. So there was a moment in my kitchen and it was like, I'm going, all right, I'm going to do this. And it wasn't an instant thing. It was just that I recognized, I was like, you know what? This is smaller than a mustard seed, like I'll start here. And I can remember just sitting there going, instead of feeling shame, I felt so much hope that I was going to be okay. And that was the beginning of it, just taking those brave steps. And like you said, wanting to go back to bed. I think sometimes the bravest thing that we can do is getting out of bed in the morning. And that needs to count, that has to,
Okay.
because, we go through struggles that are so real and so consuming, but those little moments of saying, all right, I acknowledge this. And,
Yeah, one of the things I've learned too about just any kind of emotional state that we're in that maybe we don't want to be in, and I'm not sure I would say, I don't think we would say depression is an emotion per se, but it kind of carries with it a lot of emotions that we may not want to really get stuck in. But I've learned that even by just saying how we feel at the moment, it brings our thoughts from the amygdala and the emotional
yes,
fight, flight into the prefrontal cortex where we have more logical reasoning, and it just stating the emotion like, okay, I feel sad, just
yeah,
kind of acknowledging it brings it back around and takes a little bit of the edge off of it. And that sounds like a little bit of something that you did. You're just acknowledging, okay, this is where I am and
yeah,
it's okay. I'm going to
yeah.
work through this. And yeah. Well, why don't you unpack a little bit? You do write a lot about shame,
Yeah.
and what have you discovered about shame and how we as Christ followers, Christian women, how do we deal with that? I mean, I think most of us now know the difference between shame and guilt. We kind of
Hmm.
understand that because it's
Right.
been hammered down quite a bit over the last several years, but it doesn't mean that shame won't come knocking at our doors a little bit. So, what did you discover about shame, and what has helped you the most regarding that?
So I feel like with shame, we often just spiral because we're thinking about it over and over and over again. So what I learned is I can either release it or I can rehearse it. If I rehearse it, I'm going to be going into that shame spiral, going, I should have done this, I should have done this. And so we can feed it, right? So we start feeding into that instead of speaking life over ourselves. So instead of going in that shame spiral where we just put ourselves down and where we're so disappointed in ourselves, and it's just all of these things, that these unrealistic expectations, we release it to God, release it and say, I don't have to hold on to this anymore, instead of rehearsing it and replaying all of those moments where you felt like you fell short.
Can you think of a particular time that you wouldn't mind sharing where you said, yeah, this was a hard one for me to work through and to kind of quote get over? Does anything come to mind that you would feel comfortable sharing? If somebody asked me that, I would be like, nope, I'm not sharing that. But but that doesn't mean I won't ask you.
Right. Well, I mean, I think that I struggled with social anxiety for the longest time, and I had to do upfront ministry. And so I would get like physically ill every single time.
I remember reading that.
I would get so like physically ill. And I just had this moment, and I was like, okay, God, like, and I started praying, take my anxiousness, my anxiety, and turn it into your anointing. And all of a sudden I'm out of the equation. This is just me giving it over to God. And so I called that my throw up and show up stage. Thank
Yeah.
God I don't go through that anymore. Like, thank God. It's almost like just I grew in that moment, and I get nervous, but I don't get sick like I used to, because I just have grown so much, and I'm not going to play that. I'm not going to play like, oh goodness, this is going to tank.
But
I'm going to,
But Jennifer, why were you ashamed of that though? Because to me, that doesn't sound like something really to be ashamed of necessarily. Like if we were going to be ashamed of something, but it just seems like, okay, most of us struggle with public speaking anyway, but it's just more of a scenario, not necessarily a misstep on your part that might cause you to feel shame.
I think that in the faith, especially in ministry, you think, I am not supposed to feel this, or
Oh, I
I should
see.
be strong enough. And so with depression, with anxiety, all of that. And so I've learned that depression tells us, like, especially for me, that I'm not enough. I'm not enough of, fill in the blank. Anxiety tells me I'm not doing enough. And so that alone just plays into that shame that we feel is going, I'm not enough. And we're not. But God is more than enough in us.
Do you mind if I read just like a little teeny portion of your book, kind of early in the book, maybe page 60 or 62, where you say that we've got to stop believing the lies. When we feel like we've missed the mark and failed miserably, we start to believe lies such as this. You couldn't fix the problem, so it must be your fault. You don't feel at peace or even remotely close to it, so you must be in the wrong place. You haven't fully surrendered to God. These bad things happen because you were hard to love. If you would have loved them better, they would have treated you better, and you're the problem. You should have been grateful for what you had instead of pressing for change. So we probably all had these
Right.
thoughts or believed these to one extent or the other, but how do we get out of that? I mean, it's not enough just to say, okay, I'm going to Philippians 4:8 everything. Even though
Right.
I've done that, I have done that. I'm like, nope, okay, let me go in this direction. Just
Right.
quite almost tangibly made
Yeah.
that shift in my mind and in my thinking. But is there anything else that we could do to help to resist those lies and instead make that switch and shift in our mindset? What do you think?
Um, I have people in my life that I'll be like, the story I'm telling myself is this: will you speak truth over me? And so I just, when I am really struggling with those thoughts, and I feel like, I'm going, I should have been strong enough. I should have, been easier to love. I should have, when I go into that, I immediately go to a friend, and I'm like, not only do I need you to pray for me, speak truth over me and over my situation, because they know. So I think saying it out loud and saying it to someone else who's maybe a friend or a mentor or a counselor, and just saying, this is what I'm believing. These are the lies. Help me replace those lies with God's truth, and, truth that they saw in me.
Yeah. Let me try that with my husband because sometimes I can recognize that I'm believing something that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
And for whatever reason, it's almost like I'm fishing for him to kind of help me in a way, or to, just help me to get on the other track with my thoughts. So
Right.
I kind of like that, to where I can voice, because I'm very intuitive and I'm
Mm-hmm.
very much aware of what I'm thinking about. But the hard part is making that real step and leaping off of that toxic pattern of thinking, that loop that's going on, the rumination, that whatever it might be, and then switching over to the new track. That can be kind of difficult and very bumpy for me. But I may just ask him, hey, I need you to speak the truth, because this is what I'm believing. Let's say it's about a relationship, for example. Things that I know aren't true, but I allow myself to believe them. It's the craziest thing, isn't it? I wonder
It
why we do
is.
that.
Well, I mean, I just feel like bringing someone else into it means that we can get off of that loop, because
Yeah.
we will think it to death, you know. And so bringing someone into the struggle with us is powerful.
If you could, like, say, this is who I wrote this book for, who was that
Mhm.
for?
I feel like it's for everyone who just feels like they just need to try harder,
Mm.
I feel like it's for the woman who has tried everything, is showing up for her family, showing up at the workplace, showing up at church, and just exhausted on the inside because they are not taking care of themselves. This is for the woman who's doing so much better than she even knows or could even possibly imagine, just because of who she is, and that she's showing up, but she doesn't have to show up perfect. It's for all of those women who try way too hard and find themselves exhausted by it.
And okay, so it's for us. I would be saying, okay, I think that might be me. So from there, where do I go with it? Is it enough to just quote, like, surrender this all to God? What is the practical application? Like, a couple of things that we need to do. And you've mentioned some of them, like the power of community and talking to someone about it, taking really good care of ourselves physically. What else have you said that might lend itself to,
Yeah,
switching over with our thoughts? What else could we do?
walking away from toxic situations, whether it's
Mm.
relationships, workplaces, maybe friendship circles. We have 2 feet capable of walking away from things that are harmful. So it's that. I think
Have you
that,
ever had to do that, by the way?
oh, yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there's been, I've experienced abuse, and there was many times I thought, just like I said, in that those pages, if I would have been easier to love, if
Mm.
I would have loved them better, then they wouldn't have hurt me. All of those things, to where I took such ownership of the bad things that were happening to me. So to setting them down and saying, absolutely, that was never okay, ever. Like, God
Mm.
is a rescuer. He's a redeemer. He rescues us from captivity. He doesn't send us back to what broke us. He leads us forward. So I think it took me a really long time to walk away from an abusive situation. And probably the hardest thing that I've ever done in my life. And once I did that, God opened the door for me to like finish writing this book. And I was like, this is the worst time for me to do it. This is
Right.
absolutely the worst time. But I think that there was a gritty rawness in what I wrote because I was writing through the pain, not on the other side of
Well, interesting. Yeah, you were kind of in the trenches and
it.
giving that view of, hey, this is really kind of what it's like here. So,
Okay.
yeah, I think it can be tricky to get out of those toxic relationships. And maybe it's because we feel like we failed, or we have done something wrong, or why can't I make this work, or 1,000 other things that we may say. So much of it for me, I think, is just letting things settle, just pausing a little bit to think and allow God to get into that scenario, and for me to learn what it really means to abide in Christ. Sometimes I feel like I'm so busy and I'm
Right.
doing all these good things, but I'm probably not prioritizing and taking time to do the best thing. And I may read my Bible, I'm reading through the Bible in a year. Okay,
Yeah.
that's wonderful. And it's actually quite meaningful for me to do that. Our church is doing that. But there's all those things that we can
Right.
do. Listen to praise and worship music, go to church, read the Bible, do Bible studies. But outside of really just being with the Father and talking to Him and setting aside that time for Him, that's where I think I am not doing as well as I really could. Not to shame myself either, because I realize that, I give myself a good deal of grace, I think, and especially at this season of my life, it all may look different than it did last year or another year when I was just, pounding out a devotional and writing this and writing that and all of that. So I try to be very gracious to myself, which kind of makes me think of one of the lists that you have that I really, really liked. And there are just so many of them. I love how self-aware you are and how you give yourself room to ask yourself. Sometimes when we're overwhelmed, when we're depressed, when we're anxious, it's so chaotic in our brains, we don't even know really where to begin. But you start by, you offer a lot of, you call it a mental wellness checklist. And you
Yes.
give several different checks in here, like an emotion check. The question is, how am I feeling right now? Physical well-being check. How is my body feeling? Mind clarity. Are my thoughts clear or cluttered? Social connection. When did I last connect with someone I trust? Self-compassion. Am I being kind to myself? Joy meter. What brought me joy today? Energy levels. How is my energy on a scale of 1 to 10? And intentions for the day. What's one thing I can do today to feel grounded? So I love that you give like a little checklist here that we get off kilter sometimes, but we really don't know where we're off kilter.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about why it's so important to do this wellness checklist?
I think that so many times, like you said, we just don't, we want to be healthy, we want to be whole, we want to be okay, but we don't know where to start. And so, starting with this simple things of just asking ourselves some really honest questions, like, how am I really feeling? Like, have I connected with someone? Am I eating? When's the last time that I said no without feeling guilty? Like, just all of these lists gave me practical things to do when I didn't know what else, like where to start. So I just started thinking through what would really help us, move forward instead of just talking about it. And those were,
Yeah.
the ways that I thought where we could start.
Yeah, I think that would even be, that's a great place for someone just listening to kind of go through those questions and try to isolate. We're coming on the holidays, right? So, I'm already seeing okay, even helping my mom and because, I help her to do some of her shopping for all the grandkids and all the kids and we have a really, really large family by God's grace and his blessing. I'm not complaining about that, but it's a huge family and there's a lot to do and just in helping her. And then I know our holiday is going to be a lot different, of course, without my dad, both Thanksgiving and Christmas. And that's going to even bring brand new emotions. So it's nice just to have these questions, I think, and they're only about 8 or so of them that each day I just thought, okay, I could even do those as journal prompts in the morning during my devotional time and just say, hey, how am I doing on all those things? And then if I say, okay, my energy is really low, the first question I'm going to ask myself is, how much sugar are you eating, Victoria? Because sugar is such oh my word, it will get me quicker than anything else. And then toward the end in the You're Going to Be Better Than Okay chapter, you give concrete things. And that's what I love about your book is that it's not just philosophical in nature. It's very practical, it's relatable, and they're actionable items that the reader can actually do. And who knows, one of these might be the little spark that helps to start that change. You start with daily affirmations and you're encouraging that your reader just to start each day by affirming your worth and potential, saying things like this: I'm worthy of love and care. I'm capable of handling what comes my way. My struggles do not define me. Speaking the word of life over you. And this is where scripture comes in and just pouring that scriptural truth over our hearts and our minds. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I used to absolutely hate that verse though. And I had it in my kitchen on a little ceramic placard thing. There was one moment I had it in my hand and I just about smashed it to the floor because I thought it's not true. It's not true, because I wanted to do more and I wanted to strive more. And when I read that, I can do all things, I just kind of stopped there. Or I would say, through Christ who strengthens me, but you're not strengthening me. I would say something like that. I would twist
Right.
that in a way to make it my life even harder. But anyway, I love that verse now because I think I understand it a little bit more and I don't want to do anything outside of the strength of Christ. Really, I don't think I can. And then you give some gratitude statements. Gratitude was a real pivotal shift that I could cause in my brain also when I just started, instead of looking at all the things that are bothersome to me or the critical things I may see in a relationship, if I could instead just switch that to, oh, but I'm grateful for this, because I've learned that what you focus on really does grow in your brain. And the more you tell your brain, he's so nice to me, or he's so kind, or you begin to believe what you're saying, and it's your brain will prove you right, essentially. But you say things like, I'm grateful for the strength I had to get out of bed today. I'm thankful for people who care about me. I'm grateful for the beauty around me. I've said all of these, Jennifer. I mean, they're very important. And then you mentioned forgiving self-talk. It's okay to feel this way. I'm human. I'm allowed to take things one step at a time. I release myself from guilt and embrace my journey. And then you have visualize a supportive friend's word. Maybe you can't be with that friend, but you can at least picture a time or an encounter you've had with them. Speak to yourself as if you were that friend, or you were speaking to a friend who needed encouragement. Faith-inspired promises to yourself. I am patient with my healing process. I trust there's a purpose for my life. Mindful breathing with positive statements, all that physiological, those
Yeah.
actions that help to calm our brain down are so good. And then a daily self check-in. How do I feel right now? Kind of going back to what I mentioned a moment ago. I see weekly self-care and guided prompts for all that self-reflection. But are these things that you actually do, and do you do them often in your life, or have they now become just a general, you've created a new kind of thought pattern and way to deal with your life nowadays?
So I feel like I learned all of these things the hard way, right?
Right.
And so, yes, it's become a daily, like some of these are daily practices that I have, especially the self talk. And I'm like, yeah,
Mm.
I'll be like, no, we're not going to do that,
Yeah.
we're not going to, but it's the level of grace and compassion that I give myself now that I before would withhold for just. I've made things harder. Like you said, I made things harder than they needed to be. And one of those ways was by having unrealistic expectations and not taking the time to practice gratitude, be able to rest, be able to, speak these truths over myself, be able to breathe deep and relax. I went through trauma therapy, um, about a year and a half, and realized was diagnosed with PTSD, and I
Right.
didn't know how to relax my body. I was like, I don't even know how to do this. And so like my therapist was like, breathe. And like she was doing it on a count. And I was like, why is breathing hard right now? And it was just like I realized I couldn't even get my body to even relax. And so slowing down and just breathing was ridiculously easy, but like hard at the same time. But sometimes we just need to take a breath.
Yeah, I agree. That cortisol or adrenaline that may be rushing through our bodies, just a few quick, deep breaths really does calm our nervous system down. That's a helpful little tip. Tell us what's next for you then. What do you have on tap next, Jennifer?
The next thing that I want to do, I want to write a book called Unbothered. Because
Mm.
the past, just living out this message, I had to decide what I was going to worry about and what I was going to absolutely let go of. And one of my friends and coworkers said, I don't have time to care about that right now. And I was like, there's some things that I'm going to stay unbothered about, what people
Yeah.
think about me, what people think I should be doing, and bothered by it.
It's so easy for people who are sitting in the stands to
Yes.
criticize, to throw the stones, hurl all the remarks out there, but none of them is in the arena.
Right.
So, hats off to you and glory be to God that you have decided, you made that choice, and you're like, I'm getting in the arena. And
Yeah.
I know the value, because I think that's one of the personal values that maybe
Right.
you and I share. It's that
Mhm.
we want our life story to encourage someone else, and all the burning, the fire, the issues that we've had, we want someone else to kind of step over and be able to warm themselves by that fire and the pruning that's happened in our own lives. So it's a powerful motivation. I think more than ever, that type of a work would be so helpful, just to kind of really have thick skin and like our nose to the, like, Lord, blinders. This is audience of one. This is for you, Lord, and may it help someone else. And this is the mission that you've got me on in the journey. So that sounds wonderful. I love it. So, Well, tell everyone where they can get a copy of your book. And thank you so much for sending me this copy. I loved having it in my hand. I have the digital copy also, but that I first started reading, but it was so nice to have in my hand. But where can everyone get it?
They can find my book on Amazon, anywhere they go to buy books, your favorite, whether it's Target, Walmart, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Christian book.
And your website, if they want to get in touch with you?
Absolutely. It's jenniferreneewatson.com. Really long, but you will find me there.
I thank you so much for just appearing on the show today. And I hope that everyone will rush out and get a copy of your book. I can't really think of a better time than as we're approaching winter here in Kentucky and, darker days for longer periods, not a lot of sunshine, and just this general stress for the holiday season. This would be nice to have in your back pocket with all those lists that I personally love that will give you some actionable items to do in your life to turn things around, especially if you're kind of feeling meh or blah or whatever. So thank you so much. And I pray blessings over your ministry. Thank you for holding the torch for Christ.
Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.